Reading from the book of Sirach. A kind mouth multiplies friends and appeases enemies, and gracious lips prompt friendly greetings. Let your acquaintances be many, and 1 in 1,000 your confidant. When you gain a friend, first test him, and be not too ready to trust him. For one sort is a friend when it suits him, but he will not be with you in time of distress. Another is a friend who becomes an enemy and tells of the quarrel to your shame. Another is a friend, a boon companion, who will not be with you when sorrow comes. When things go well, he is your other self and lords it over your servants. But if you are brought low, he turns against you and avoids meeting you. Keep away from your enemies. Be on guard with your friends. A faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. He who finds one finds a treasure. A faithful friend is beyond price. No sum can balance his worth. A faithful friend is a life-saving remedy, such as he who fears God finds. For he who fears God behaves accordingly, and his friend will be like himself. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Responsorial Psalm. Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands.
Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands.
Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes.
Guide me, O Lord, in the way of your commands.
In your statutes I will delight. I will not forget your words.
Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands.
Open my eyes that I may consider the wonders of your law.
Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands.
Make me understand the way of your precepts, and I will meditate on your wondrous deeds.
Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands.
Give me discernment that I may observe your law and keep it with all my heart.
Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands.
Lead me in the path of your commands, for in it I delight.
Guide me, Lord, in the way of your commands. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Jesus came into the district of Judea and across the Jordan. Again, crowds gathered round him, and, as was his custom, he again taught them. The Pharisees approached him and asked, "Is it lawful for a husband to divorce his wife?" They were testing him. He said to them in reply, "What did Moses command you?" They replied, "Moses permitted a husband to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her." But Jesus told them, "Because of the hardness of your hearts he wrote you this commandment. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, no human being must separate." In the house, the disciples again questioned Jesus about this, and he said to them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery." The Gospel of the Lord. One quick word about this last bit in the Gospel. In Jewish law, women could not divorce their husbands. And so it is obvious to me that what is really being talked about there in a semi-cryptic way is Jesus pointing a finger at Herod and Herodias. They were all raised really pretty much in Rome. They didn't care one bit for their Jewish heritage except when it was convenient to get the title of king. And in fact, she ran off without her husband, who was Herod's brother, and it was just a whole mess. So I'm convinced that's pretty much what's being pointed out. But I'd rather look at the first reading today from Sirach. And I just had a couple of thoughts to guide myself here. Just to ask us the question, have you ever had, or in fact might you still have, somebody that you would authentically call a best friend? And if you can remember one, or if you've got one like that, you know how intense and how wonderful that relationship is, and how it enriches you, and it makes you such much more a better person. Because as the first reading here reminds us, some friends are only here for the ride. There they are. And it makes me think, for example, in the gospel of the so-called friends that the prodigal son had while his money was still around. Happy to party with you as long as you're paying the bill. But when things go a little by, well, I'm sorry. Got other places I have to go and other people I have to be with. And the first reading reminds us there's some who bail out when we're in trouble. And makes me think of the Last Supper. In John's Gospel, Jesus tells the disciples, I don't call you servants anymore. I have called you friends. And what do they do in the garden? They leave. They run. What might the story of the Passion have looked like had the 12 actually stood there with Jesus and said to the high priests and the soldiers and whatnot, you take him, you're taking us too? Might have been an interesting kind of a change. But, they all fled. They all ran away. And then there's some who are in fact utterly loyal, as the last half of our excerpt from the New Testament really celebrates. And that may be our best friend that we can really remember. And if I can tie it into the gospel then, what a joy it is if that best friend happens to be your spouse at the same time. Because then you've got a relationship that is incredibly solid and wonderful. But for us, I think I need to ask a slightly different question. It's not a question so much of do we have or have we had a best friend? It's rather, are we for somebody else a best friend? And that's an important way to realize that Jesus makes the same kind of a twist to the scribe who asks, who is my neighbor? And he gets told the parable of the Good Samaritan, and the conclusion is, who can you be a neighbor to? And so we need to ask the question today, who can I be an authentic friend to? That's the great kind of mantra, three-part mantra you might say of the Cursillo movement. Make a friend, be a friend, and then bring the friend to Christ. And for us today then, we might just want to focus ourselves on who are our friends and who are the people that we can authentically be friends in Jesus Christ to. So let us stand and pray.